minerals in his main are natural. I think that the 10 o'clock expansion might also be mined out. And I'm not sure exactly what the status are of the bases in the northeast. I think the most likely thought is that over in the northeast in the 2 o'clock position is the only mining base, but you know, just looking at the mini-map, it doesn't look like there's anything there, and it looks like he's also sending a ton of SCVs out to try once again to take this 9 o'clock position. There are just a ton of siege tanks there, and finally Leta is going to drop on those tanks, doing some Goliath and tank bombing on those sieged up tanks, and finally doing the damage that he needs to and clearing out that base. Will he be able to land his command center? That is another question that I cannot tell you. Those wraiths are coming in and doing a lot of damage to the dropships right there. Scan goes off and there's a lot of Goliaths in the area. They're going to pick off 1 or 2 of those wraiths, but those wraiths definitely did enough damage right there. So Leta is finally able to land this command center, and he's putting up some missile turrets so that those wraiths or a dropship force from Fantasy can't come in and clear it out once again like they had already. Sorry, I'm going to take a break, have some water. This one is becoming a doozy, and not quite the creative, interesting, amazing fireworks show that I was thinking of with these two of probably the most creative Terrans that are playing today. But we are seeing a very classic TVT expansion and expansion denial game, and Leta at least showing partially why he's so good on this map. I really like that attack between the 5 and 6 o'clock positions, and I really think that kept him in the game. I think he was in real danger right at that point, but he did exactly what he needed to. Also showing that he knows the strengths and weaknesses of this late game Wraith strategy. Obviously he's used it on his own to great effect, but being able to defend himself pretty well with his massive Goliaths. And you know, Fantasy, you know, I think in his mind, when he built those Wraiths, that was going to be like it. You know, he was going to build the Wraiths, and you know, he was in a position that he had enough economy that he was just going to keep pumping wraiths and tanks and just outproduce Leta. But Leta was able to, you know, get a good unit composition to counteract that, and then go in and do his own damage by taking out a base. And now that he has landed over in the 9 o'clock position, he has been mining on that since he landed, I believe. So he is in good position right now to keep mining, and he's going to have resources. Fantasy, on the other hand, is definitely thin, and I think the only mining base that he would have is that one at the 5 o'clock, but Leta has been able to continue to deny that, and is still putting pressure on it right now. And Fantasy, I believe that is pretty much all of his forces that he has rallied around in that 6 o'clock base, a huge group of tanks, and that big Wraith force. But the Wraith force is not going to be enough against all of these Goliaths if Leta is able to keep them close to his tanks. Also, Leta has a little bit of an advantage in the fact that, you know, Fantasy has only one place that he needs to attack. He has to attack there at the 5 o'clock base. He has to get it running if he wants to keep competing economically. It looks like he does have some minerals over there in the southeast main starting position. So he, I guess he's not completely dead in the water like I thought he might be, but you know, still he is definitely low on resources, and you know, that 5 o'clock base is where he needs to be in order to really get an economic lead. And finally, it looks like Fantasy has taken that position. I think Leta has just kind of moved out of it, or just the forces that he had down there have been taken out. So Fantasy is actually now turning himself into a position where he can regain the economic lead. There's also the possibility of the natural expansion just outside of that southeast starting position, and you know, if he can take that as well, then he will be mining off of 3 bases, and Leta's just mining off of 1 and maybe a half over in the 2 o'clock position. Leta, in the meantime, is sending over and being a pest at that position again, and just sieging over the line towards Fantasy's main base, doing a little bit of damage to some supply depots and some factories, but still not a huge strategic advantage right there, I don't think. Maybe if he'd be able to push all the way in and take out, you know, a lot of the production, then he might have a bit of an advantage, but for now he's just sieging up his tanks and being a pest. Once again, Fantasy coming in, being able to pick off one of those tanks with that group of Wraiths, but Goliath's able to defend and kill off a couple of the Wraiths, so those Wraiths, while an interesting play, have not really paid off all too well. The biggest victory they had was that they were able to kill off maybe 3 or 4 dropships, but apart from that, just a handful of tanks around the map that have just been positioned, but in general, Goliaths have been close to all of the tanks, and Leta's been able to defend pretty well against those Wraiths. Actually, Leta being able to clear out a pretty good amount of territory with all of that pestering over there in the southwest position. Only a couple of tanks defending for Fantasy, so he's not too concerned about it, but being able to force Fantasy to lift off a lot of those factories, and it looks like Leta's going to make a push right now. He has got a big dropship force along with some ground units, and he is moving in to clear out some forces over in the 6 o'clock, and I think he's going to use that position again to march in to the 5 o'clock position as well, because now Fantasy has nothing there to possibly defend that. Leta's going, while he's in the area, he's going to pick off that command center at the 5 o'clock position, but critically, there's nothing really mining there for Fantasy, so he's not going to worry about that command center going down too much, but he is definitely worried about keeping this 5 o'clock. It looks like now those raids are coming into play, trying to do some damage to those dropships, a good scan, and some more of those raids getting killed off. It looks like there's only 2 Wraiths left, 1 Wraith left. Those Goliaths are really winning that battle against the Wraiths, and Fantasy is having to lift off that command center over in the 5 o'clock position. This can be very bad for Fantasy. That command center is going to go down. So Leta being able to take down that command center in the 5 o'clock position and regain control of that area a little bit, and Fantasy is going to be suffering a little bit on the economic side. He has the base in the southeast corner up and running, and that is still, it looks like it's still pretty full of minerals. But now Leta also has this base over in the 9 o'clock. So they are more or less evened up, and but Leta just has control over more of the map. I mean, if you look at it now, it's just Fantasy has these little pockets in the southeast and the southwest, but that's about it. And now Leta is going in and really turning the tides and taking that 5 o'clock base for himself, building a command center there, and you know, he's got the forces to do it right now. He's been slowly picking away at Fantasy's forces, slowly gaining control of the map, and he has all of the north, all of the northeast and northwest, pretty much all of the western position up until the southwest, and critically taking that southern middle part down at the 5 and 6 o'clock. And since he controls all of that territory, you know, Fantasy's really locked in. He's almost on 2 islands, and you know, it's going to be hard for him to move forces around, because he's going to, no matter which direction he goes, he's going to have to move over Leta's bases and his forces. And, you know, Leta's really gained himself a strategic advantage in terms of his base positioning. Fantasy coming in. Oh, I thought he was moving all the way into the 9 o'clock. He might still be doing that. Ooh, excuse me. This is, all of this talking is finally getting to me. I'm going to have another sip of water. 40-minute game already. Well, 39 minutes right now, but a very long game right here, and they are flirting with mining out all of Neo Moon Glaive, which is maybe not the most impressive map to mine out because it's only a 3-player map, but still has a pretty good amount of resources, especially since they added a couple more gases. when they changed it from Moon Glaive to Neo Moon Glaive in round 2. Let's see, Fantasy, what else can I say about him? Oh, there it is, there we go, Fantasy is going for nukes, that's what I can say about him, and that is immediately scanned, almost instantaneously, as soon as that covert ops was being built, a scan going on.